Okay, so this is a video talking about the SleepeR feature that we've been adding to Node Noggin. The SleepeR feature is basically a feature that allows you to take content in Node Noggin that's been gathered by a team and compare it against a reading list or a corpus of texts, and to see whether there's some matches, and then to bring that information into Node Noggin to get the team that's thinking about a particular idea to engage with that reading list in creative and interesting ways. And so I'm going to talk through some of the workshops that we've done to iterate on the tool's general idea. It's called SleepeR because the idea is that you kind of work in your team, putting ideas into Node Noggin, and then when you're done, you go away and percolate on the idea, and also the machine goes away and percolates on the idea, and you have to wait a certain amount of time. And to begin with, we determined this would be like an overnight wait. You've got to wait 8 hours, and then you'll be presented back with some of the material that the SleepeR tool has provided in the Node Noggin interface. So I'm just going to switch over to that, and then I'll talk a little bit about how we've been developing it. Okay, press that. Okay, yeah, so I've been really fortunate over the last couple of months to basically get some web science funding that has allowed me to build effectively this small data set AI capacity into Node Noggin, and I'll show you the Research Notes website where you can read a bit about it as well. I'm trying to keep a sort of updated blog, and also some of the Git lab repos that also have some notes around the kind of work we've been doing. Again, trying to work really openly. What I've also been really fortunate to do is to work with a diverse group of women and people of colour who are extraordinary computer scientists, and it would be without their work that any of this would be possible. So, you know, it's been great working with them to kind of create this SleepeR function. So this is what it might look like in the finished article, but I'm going to show you some of the things and how it's currently working, and we're moving towards, we've still got a couple months left in the project, moving towards embedding it into the user interface of Node Noggin in a little bit more of a delightful manner, as you kind of see here. But let's talk about the first workshop that we did based on getting the kind of general SleepeR tool up and running. So the first project we had with the students was a project called Toy, which was a project where students in teams had to develop a toy in sustainable textiles, and then basically each team would produce their own toy, but they needed to kind of work together as a game. And so the students went to Legoland to kick off this project, and then they obviously did some research around toys and what toys are, and we also had a couple of other things in the brief that suggested that toys had to display particular emotions to underpin the toy's design, so teams could pick an emotion they felt that would be interesting for the toy to, you know, be acting upon. As you can see here, we've got all the students that sort of gathered in their teams around tables discussing this. In first instance was what their thoughts and words. So I asked them to kind of type into Node Noggin and discuss what they thought the keywords that came to mind from the Legoland field trip. So they would add those into Node Noggin, and then what we did was we then had obviously a reading list. So we had a reading list for this project already set up, and so if I skip back to Finder, so let's get rid of this. Here we go. So we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 texts, a couple of big game design books, but mainly we focused initially on this article in The Guardian about toys, this toy fandom, Emma Ray's chapter on digital toys, Roland Barth's extract on toys, and we also had Seth Gidding's toy chapter draft that we were able to have access early, and that was mainly the ones we worked with. We added the game design text later, and so what we did was we got the students to come up with the keywords, and then we said, okay, we're going to take that and we're going to compare it against the reading list. What I also asked the students was, have any of you read the text from the reading list on the project in the last week? And pretty much I think one person said they'd read a bit of one of them. So everyone else was brutally honest and said, no, I haven't read the texts. So they hadn't, although, you know, they'd had a week in, they'd had a field trip, we'd given them a reading list, they hadn't engaged with any of those texts at all. And that's fine. often we give students reading lists and they don't read them. So part of this is to see, is there a way that we can engage the reading list in the studio in a much more interesting fashion? And what we found is that yes, we can. And in fact, this helps students to use this material in creative and interesting ways. And we've only sort of started scratching the surface of that. So I'll talk a little bit about that. So what we did was we then ran, I took the keywords. So let me show you where the keywords are. So this is each team. I'll just open up one. This is each team's nodes from within Node Noggin when they were asked to think about their thoughts about Legoland. And I did ask them to put in keywords, and they put in a few different words. Here we can see all the data from Node Noggin. We've anonymized, even though we stripped out the JSON from the CouchDB, we obviously anonymized the users so that no one knows who wrote what, because we don't want to know that. And so then we took that information and we compared it against that reading list. And all we did in this instance was a keyword search term, and we said, okay, what is the most of these texts, what should this team look at? So then what happened is we got out of the SleepeR tool in this instance. Each team, so this is the name and the microcosm they're in, the words that they put into there were ranked. The highest scoring words obviously then were compared against all of the reading list, and then they were given their top article. So in this instance, this team was said, you should go and look at the Guardian article. This team here said, well, based on what you've been thinking in your microcosm together, you should go and look at Emma Ray's chapter. And then this team here actually go and look at Seth Giddings' Toying with the Singularity. Now the eagle-eyed of you will spot the word welcome scoring in a bunch of these. That's because that was in a default node that we hadn't removed, and so later on we ran the same test to make sure that that word wasn't always scoring high. But as you can see, each team is given a text to read, and it's not really of much surprise, I'd say, but when asked then, would you now go and read that text, each team said, yeah, I would, because now they've been given a route into the reading list. Even though it was only about 5 or 6 chapters, then these were not long text. I mean, the Roland Barthes one is really short. But just the act of thinking about the visit to Legoland, typing in what they thought were the keywords, and then getting a response from SleepeR to say, well, your team, you should read first the Guardian article. Your team, you should read first Seth Giddings' article on Toying with the Singularity. And they all said, I'd definitely start now to look at that, just from that single exercise. So that was really exciting and interesting, and felt that it instantly opened up the reading list to the students. So then obviously you want to take it a bit further, we want to do more with the SleepeR tool and think, well, what else could we do creatively with the SleepeR tool? And of course the next step is like, well, what about if we presented some of the reading list, but not just like this is the top book, this is the top text, but to pull out paragraphs from that and indicate where they come from in that book or in that chapter. So that was the next idea, was okay, let's see what happens if we run the same activity, but this time we delve a little deeper, and the insight that we give to the text, to the reading list, is not only this book, but what about here's a paragraph of text from the book? Is that going to prompt some thought and some idea generation when you're coming up with a new idea or a new project? So the next thing that we did, let me hide this, and I should be able to demo this now, is, okay, so I'm in VS Code, and let me get rid of that one, and I've just got this one open here. So the next project we had with students, these are quite short, sharp projects, was an anti-capitalism game jam that we wanted our students to engage with. And so for that game jam, this was a very short project, because we got them to create sort of game books, was I took Darren Allen's book, 33 Myths of the System, and we broke it into basically chapters. So each I broke the PDF into each chapter as an individual PDF that you can see here. So, you know, we've got myth 1, myth of economics, and that's like 5 or 6 pages. What is it? Myth 2, myth of money. Myth 15, the myth of nice. Myth of truth, myth of law, myth of culture. So this is it's an anti-capitalism text. Really interesting if you haven't read it. And this, you can now buy the 2nd edition. This was actually from the first open source or Creative Commons license 1st edition. So then to do that, obviously what we then did was the same activity. We got the students to work in their teams. So I'll open this one here, and to think about, you know, what is anti-capitalism. So they went away, they had a week where the project was introduced, a week to go and research what, you know, anti-capitalism, and then I asked them to say, okay, now in your team, as you discuss what this is, you've had a week to think about it, to research it, capture into Node Noggin your thoughts about what it is, what is anti-capitalism, what's interesting to you, and to type that into your nodes in Node Noggin as you discuss it in the studio. And that's what each team did. So you can see there's a few here of what it means. So they thought, you know, this, and you'll notice that now we've stripped out all of the other Node Noggin data and we've just got the text, no information, etc. You know, so that again makes it a much cleaner JSON file that we can then interrogate. So then let's do the first version of this. So what we've got then in the SleepeR tools, we've got a bunch of different tools. So we have, and again I can show you the website. I minimised that, didn't I? There we go. So if you go to gitlab.adamproctor.co.uk/SleepeR, we've got these notes here from an Obsidian Vault that I've been running, although I now need to update the icon. And then we've got the SleepeR tools, which has got a really good readme on how you can kind of use each tool, and I'll talk about the demos in a minute. What we're going to do now is we're going to do this TF-IDF search. So this script then will identify keywords from the notes, so the nodes, the JSON data, find the most similar documents to those based on the keywords, and return information about where those keywords appear in the document. So yeah, the main difference is the script, and the previous one is it uses TF-IDF to rank the importance of the words. So it's a slightly better ranking effectively of how kind of useful this is. Okay, so let's just do that live, because we can. So what I've done is I've obviously got that all set up on my Mac. You can download all this and set it up. It takes a little bit of setup, but again the README will sort of kind of walk you through that if you want to try it out. And of course I've got from Node Noggin, I've exported, because you can now do that in Node Noggin, each microcosm for each team. So I've actually got like 10 teams or whatever in there, and I've got my texts. So those are the PDFs from the reading list. You know, you could run this for one microcosm. It depends how many teams. Obviously, what I want to do here is the students have worked in all their teams, and because the function of running this TF-IDF search is not yet in the interface, I had to run it for them, and I wanted to make it so I could run it for all teams really, really quickly. That's why I can run it against our folder rather than just an individual file. So all I've got here is I've just Python 3, I'm running the TF-IDF search thing against, and I'm picking where are my reading lists, they're in that folder called TXTs, where's the notes from my Node Noggin nodes, they're in that JSONs folder, and where am I going to put the output of this, which is actually some CSV files that allow you to yes, a bunch of CSV files that you can then open up and see these paragraphs, much like the presented thing here. So I'll show you that, and then you get an idea of how it works. So let me hide that. Let me run the script. Okay, so that script is now running. So it's looking at the reading list. It's looking at the JSON files, and then it's going to put into the output for each team a CSV file based on those keywords and the reading list. So you can see here it's building each of those. And in the output of the terminal, it's actually telling me what the keywords were for each of those teams as it makes them, which is quite fun. So if I open up, let's just open this first one up. Ooh. So if I open up that first one, and let's make this a bit bigger, let's wrap this. So if I choose to wrap, where is it, word wrap? Oh, it's done wrap text, yeah. It didn't do wrap text, you are lying. Wrap text, thank you. Okay, so what we can see now is, how do I collapse that thing? There we go. We can see the different chapters. I haven't properly named them, but obviously, you know, if it was actually the chapters were properly named, we'd see the name of the chapter, so I could look at what MIF 19, what MIF 20 is, etc. This hasn't currently got the ranking order. That's missing, but we've added that. So you can actually rank, you know, you see which one did you score the most of. So related like to the first search, it gives you the top chapter. And then shows you the keyword, and then it's got a sentence and the page number from that chapter. And we can see here that if we're thinking about, like, we're typing in some things about anti-capitalism, what we think it is, what it might be, it's found some of the keywords that it thinks are really interesting, like shame here as an example, and it's pulled out of the reading list MIF 20, page 3, this paragraph: those who are granted inspiring jobs operating on children's brains, working for the small or designing actors' hats. I don't know, you know, it's just yet cling to their wonderful task like grim death and turn a blind eye to the compromise and shame of living on the golden peak of Job Mountain. So what is MIF 20? Let's find out. MIF 20 is the myth of fun. Okay, so the myth of fun is of things. So we're already generating here some really interesting things that you think, well, maybe I should read that chapter or that book. But also we're just getting kind of like inspiration from this idea. So here we've got another one for the word fun, same myth, and it says here, those who can afford to have meaningful relationships with lions or are paid to compete in high-tech bicycle races, or swan. I mean, we've got swan, lion, high-tech bicycle races, glitzy parties. I'm already thinking about things that could be an anti-capitalism game, and I'm basing it on extracts from an anti-capitalist text. I think it's just super interesting, and the students then were sent these as PDFs as inspiration for them to take their projects forward. And again, they said, you know, it made them really want to more look at the chapter. It made them have a bunch of differing ideas about what anti-capitalism might be. It also gave them some mechanics and things for games in a really fun and exciting way. So what we've now done is we've taken that and we're presenting it back to the students in this kind of format here. We've got the top book that it's found out of that series of texts. In this instance, we just used one book and split it into chapters. And then it's provided these little snippets and told you, you know, where they are within that book. And, you know, just again, it could be within those, you could have these chapters. And the idea here is that you could kind of, you flick through these books or the chapters, and it would then present you with that. And of course, the top one would be at the top, etc. And again, I think you can see just from this experiment, and students are quite interested about it, that it's just an idea generation machine. Your team thinks anti-capitalism is fun, and you've now been pointed to a particular text, and you've been pointed to a particular paragraph in that text with some words that relate to your team's thoughts around what that thing, concept, idea might be. So where we've gone next with it is that we also have now got it so that it can basically build new text. So we've sort of moved to have slightly bigger sort of language models. Again, we've made sure that we're using open source language models, and that we've also set it so that there are sort of a build up. So we go from a Markov chain model to build the text to an RNN model to then a language model. And in this instance, the language model that we're using is, did I write that down? Yes, I did. Is the dist-L GPT-2 language model, which is a language model and you can change them, but it's a language model from Hugging Face. And so here I can read about the language model. What's really interesting is you can then find out about what the language model has been trained on. So obviously GPT-2 is a family of models, and then there's this extra layer that they've then trained it on. So it tells us here about what we could use it for, but what it also makes really clear is that with these open source models, the bias has not really been removed from the training in any capacity. So there is definitely the potential for this to write something horrendous, offensive, rude, crude, completely out of order, based on the fact that it's got a bias data set. So what that's going to allow us to do, though, is have those conversations about biased data sets. When we're thinking about an idea and we talk about something specific like anti-capitalism, and then what comes out of this learning model is something that's really racist or offensive, we can then kind of flag that. We want to put it in a jail, and then we can use that jail to have a conversation about the biased nature of the data sets. Obviously within the larger language models like ChatGPT-3, which is not open source, they've been working to basically remove that information from being surfaced. So to try and where it is pulling in data that looks like it would be bias, or uses that bias to create something horrendous, they are actively removing it. But how they're doing that, what they're doing with GPT, we don't know, because you can't see into those models at this point. But with GPT-2, it's open source, and here we can actually read, and we're just using Hugging Face stuff, and you can change the models, you can actually read what it was based on, and also there's the academic article that was written about it. So let's do a bit of that because we can, and then the last thing I'm going to show you is that we can get it to generate a collaborative poem from the keywords, the reading list, and us making some choices, which again is really fun, and it gives you something creative out of the ideas of the team, the group, the reading list that's important to that project, and then using some of these language models to do that. Now we are focused on trying to keep these small data sets, so you can pick the language models you want to use, and the idea is you can build up from the Markov chain model to the RNN to the language model, so that it gets more and more complex, and you start to understand what the AI is actually doing, so it's human understandable. That's in as many places as possible. We're building some documentation that helps you to understand what this is doing. But also, Node Noggin is not a remote tool. It's designed to work in the art school environment, in the studio environment, to prompt discussion. And so this allows us to make a bunch of choices. And then again, in the interface, you might be able to ratchet up from the market chain, Markov chain, to the language model. That might be an option. You can click up and see what happens. And then you can also go, okay, what about if I try and use a GPT-2 family that's been trained just on Native American texts, so I can sort of start to get small data sets and actually use them in interesting ways, and use them for our idea generation, our thinking, and our conversation about a project, to create new things, to create new games, new projects, all those kind of things. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go down and I'm going to run the demo, and I'll show you how that kind of functions really quickly. So if I go back here, I'll do the demo and I'll do the poems. So Python 3 demo.py. Okay, so this is now running the demo, which allows me to tell it a number of things, which is well, we'll see. The demo is going to do it for me. Let me see if I can make this a bit bigger, which I probably can. Ooh, yes, I can. Okay, so what it's now asking me for is the reading list folder path. So I should have most of that on my clipboard. I do. Okay. Zoom back in. So that is the reading list folder. So I know that's the TXTs. Then it wants the nodes. So that's the JSON. So that's from the nodes in Node Noggin. So again, I'm going to paste that and I'm going to put JSONs. And what have I done wrong? It has not. Have I put in the wrong loading data? Oh, no such path or directory texts. Oh, maybe there's too much of a space. Let me try. Let me just type it in. Pasting never really works, does it? User slash desktop scene test2 slash txts users scene test2 slash JSONs. That's better. Pasting into a terminal is never good. Okay, so what it's done now is it's looked at that data, it's loaded what we're calling memory, so that's the search. The search is the memories of the data, and then it's also loading some dreams. So that's the imagined text that could come out of it. So let's just look at a memory. That's just a search. So it's found that the couple of okay, I'm going to switch to that mic. Yeah, okay, so the camera just died, so I'm not sure what bit you didn't hear. So anyway, so that's now working. So what I've done there is it's loaded the memories, which is the search, it's found the keywords, it's loaded some dreams, which is the made up text that we're going to use, which we're going to use the distilled GPT-2 language model to do those dreams. Let's do another SleepeR memory, which again, like I said, is just a search. So again, it's found the keyword there, choice, chapter 7 again, but now it's page 2. And again, it says the market for masses can only permit choice between products and services. So you probably didn't catch the bit I was talking about earlier, was like, you know, if I'm thinking about making a game about anti-capitalism, you know, meaningful independent choice that ceases to be visible already gets me thinking creatively about what could that be in terms of game mechanics and game ideas. And again, you know, selecting that reading list, which we did for the students, allows that kind of access to those kind of ideas triggered from what you think as a team anti-capitalism might mean, and then bringing that reading list to life. Okay, let's create a dream, and then we're going to finish up with the poems, because I'm going to miss another train if I don't. So this is now going to take a little bit longer because it is basically taking the text, you know, the keywords, the text that is picking one of the texts from the document, and then it is using the language model to write a new paragraph. And the prompt here is write a story that relates to this. I can't remember what that prompt is that's put into the demo. Again, you can look at it on the repo. Yeah, so there we got this brand new thing. You can say see the memory. So if I say yes, it shows me what the memory was for that. So actually it used the same, it looks like it used the same things to input that text. Yes, I think that's all. Is that all the memories? I think that's shown all the memories. So let's scroll back up to the, oh yeah, that's all the memories. So that's all the memories it's used to create the dream, as we're calling it. And you can save those memories out, so that would save it just like the CSV file. And we're also going to add the function to save the dreams as well. But these dreams is where you could end up with something really horrendous. But again, it's like Mark was having dinner with his girlfriend. He told her about the idea of a trip to Europe, and she was like, what do you think? This is a fun activity, but not everyone is into it. Mark has also talked to some other psychiatrists that are discussing what they might think would be good ideas. This is kind of mad. Mark decided to go somewhere else. Okay, should we do one more dream just because they are a little bit scary and we don't know what might come out? Every day people are denied an authentic life and sold back its representation. There is a lot of choice when the market for the masses can only permit choice between products and services. I mean, you've got the starting of some kind of crazy story, crazy world, who knows. So let's come out of this and finish up with creating a poem. There we go, Q to exit. So for the poem, I need to run Python 3. And then let me scroll out so I can just check. It is called HiQ because they're a bit similar to that. .py. Let's zoom back in a little bit so you can see it. Let's go. So now it's going away. Ooh. And here again it's using, as far as I can remember, yeah, the distilled GPT-2. So it needs our reading list path. Okay, so we've done the same thing. We've put in all the myths, we've put in the same JSON, so the same team thing, and then here I can enter a number of syllables. So now what it's going to do, it's extracted the same, it's done the same search and extracted the same paragraph from that, you know, the memories as we were calling them. And now I can extract some syllables out of that to build this collaborative poem. So let's say 7. It's finding the keywords and then it's written the start of the poem. Okay, so it says, and proliferating bureaucracy never harmed anyone. So I'm giving it the second part of the poem, and then I get it to give me the final part of the poem. So then it did, yeah, so that might be for the first team. And proliferating bureaucracy never harmed anyone, ever, never hacked. Now it's spectacles, high-tech imagination limiting. Okay, what can we say next? Okay, let me just check that I'm not going to miss this train, because then I'll be really stuck. Okay. What about contact lenses? Low tech eyeballs. I don't know. Oh, I said contact lenses straight after that. Right, so you can then build these poems. Again, might just be interesting creative prompts for a project where the poems are being built by a collaboration of your team's ideas, a reading list, and then you responding to this kind of syllable related poem. All right, so that's where we got to so far. We've got another couple of months of the project left to build in some more AI, but mainly we're focusing on wrapping up this documentation so it's really clear what it's doing, so it's human understandable. That's really important part of the project, and that you can play with it online if you want to. Of course, you can download the whole thing. It's all free software. You can connect up your own language models if you want, but mainly what we want to do next is sort of bring some of this back to the interface of Node Noggin, so you can do it within Node Noggin itself, come sort of August. So yeah, I know that was, I don't know how much audio got missed in the middle there, which is a bit annoying, but everything's basically running out of power. So yeah, thanks again.